On October 13, 2008, in Santo André, part of Greater São Paulo, a young woman's ordinary afternoon was tragically interrupted. What began as a private dispute escalated into a public spectacle, a multi-day hostage crisis broadcast live across Brazil, culminating in an outcome that shocked a nation. This investigation delves into sensitive themes, including domestic violence, coercive control, and the ethical complexities of media coverage during a crisis. Viewer discretion is advised. If you appreciate in-depth, respectful investigations into real cases, please like this video and subscribe to Brazil's Crime Vault. Your support helps us bring more documented cases to light with care and accuracy. This is the case of Eloá Pimentel. Her story became a stark reminder of how quickly possessiveness can turn into captivity, and how the public eye, while bringing awareness, can also complicate the most delicate of situations. We approach this case with respect for Eloá and her family, refusing sensationalism while maintaining investigative rigor, distinguishing clearly between what is established through evidence and what remains debated. The relationship at the heart of this tragedy involved Eloá and an adult man, Lindenberg Alves Fernandes, her ex-partner. Even before the crisis, the age difference and power imbalance were significant. Lindenberg, according to later court proceedings and verified reports, struggled to accept the end of their relationship. His actions would be framed not as a momentary lapse, but as a pattern consistent with coercive control, an individual treating another human being as property, interpreting rejection as a challenge to be met with dominance. On October 13th, the crisis began. Eloá was at an apartment with friends. Lindenberg arrived, and through threats and confinement, transformed a normal gathering into a hostage situation. The initial police response, documented in a Boletim de Ocorrência, Brazil's equivalent of a police report, marked the formal start of a high-stakes operation. For an American audience, it's important to understand Brazil's policing structure. The military police are the uniformed, state-level force responsible for immediate response and securing scenes, while the civil police are the state-level investigative police who build cases and conduct forensic work. In hostage situations, specialized units and negotiators from these forces are deployed. Early in the standoff, some individuals were reportedly released. This pattern is often seen in hostage crises driven by emotional control, where the aggressor aims to maintain leverage over the primary target. Eloá remained inside. This detail is crucial as it aligns with a common dynamic in intimate partner violence. The victim is not collateral. The victim is the point of the aggressor's control. Outside, negotiators began their work, aiming to slow the pace, lower the temperature, and establish communication. The goal is always to buy time, as prolonged negotiation often increases the chances of a peaceful resolution. However, this situation was far from controlled. The apartment building was in a densely populated area, attracting crowds and critically television cameras. The standoff quickly became a national broadcast with continuous live coverage. This intense media presence created a unique and challenging environment. While the media did not cause the crime, its role became a significant point of debate. Many negotiation protocols rely on controlling the hostage taker's access to an audience, as a public platform can embolden an aggressor, increasing their ego and defiance, and making surrender psychologically more difficult. The standoff stretched for nearly 100 hours, a duration that amplified stress, exhaustion, and the risk of a sudden, irreversible act. This prolonged confinement highlighted the core dynamic of coercive control. The victim, though physically present, is isolated, trapped with someone who dictates their every moment. During this extended period, multiple voices began to interfere with the negotiation process. Officers on different shifts, different negotiators, reporters, bystanders, relatives, and sometimes even people who knew the aggressor. The more voices involved, the less control negotiators had over the situation. This fragmentation of communication is a critical risk factor in hostage situations, as it can lead to miscalculation, conflicting messages, and unpredictable escalation. A particularly controversial element of the case involved Eloá's friend, Nayara Rodrigues. According to verified media reports, Nayara was released at one point, but later returned to the apartment where she was again taken hostage and subsequently shot. The reasons for her return have been widely discussed, with various accounts pointing to emotional manipulation, youth, and the chaotic environment. This moment became one of the most debated aspects of the case, because it suggests that the situation outside the apartment was not purely protective. It may have been confused, pressured, and influenced by forces that did not prioritize operational discipline. What is established is the outcome. Her re-entry significantly increased the number of lives at risk inside the confined space. This incident underscored the immense pressure and potential for miscalculation in such a volatile situation, and it raised hard questions about how untrained individuals can inadvertently complicate a crisis that requires precision and control. As the crisis entered its final phase on October 17th, the tension reached a breaking point. The broad facts are established. Police made a forced entry into the apartment. Gunfire occurred. Eloá was shot, and Nayara was also shot. Lindenberg was arrested at the scene. Eloá was transported for medical care, but tragically succumbed to her injuries on October 18, 2008. The debate that followed centered not on who was responsible for the violence. Lindenberg's culpability was clear, but on the tactical decisions made during the police operation, the timing, method of entry, and whether alternatives could have led to a different outcome. In any hostage situation, tactical intervention is a complex calculation, balancing the risk of delay against the potential for a sudden entry to trigger violence. Both scenarios carry risk, and that is what makes these decisions so brutally difficult for those responsible. Following the tragedy, Brazil's justice system took action. Intentional crimes against life, particularly homicide, are typically tried in the Tribunal do Júri, Brazil's jury trial system for such cases. The Ministério Público, the public prosecutor's office, brought charges against Lindenberg. He was tried and convicted. His sentence, often reported as extremely high, sometimes described as nearly a century when combining multiple crimes and aggravating factors, reflects the severity of his actions. For American viewers, it's important to note that at the time, Brazilian law limited the maximum time an individual could actually serve in prison, regardless of the total sentence announced in court. This means that while the numerical sentence was substantial, the practical incarceration period operated under different rules than many U.S. expectations. The conviction, however, firmly established Lindenberg's criminal responsibility for abducting and killing Eloá, and for the violence against others. The cultural aftermath of Eloá's case was profound. It sparked national grief, anger, and intense debate. Critiques emerged regarding systemic failures, the police operation, and the ethics of media coverage. Questions were raised about who failed Eloá and what could have been done differently. Many argued that the live television coverage crossed ethical lines, potentially interfering with a delicate negotiation that required privacy and control. This case became a critical reference point in discussions about domestic violence, media responsibility, and crisis management in Brazil. The case also forced a national reckoning. How much of a victim's trauma should be broadcast? At what point does public awareness become public exploitation? These questions remain relevant today, as media organizations continue to grapple with the ethics of covering active crises. Eloá's story also provides crucial educational context on the warning signs of coercive control. These include possessiveness, an inability to accept a breakup, threats of self-harm or harm to others, demands for constant contact, isolation of the victim from friends and family, and reactions to rejection with rage or intimidation. These are not merely dramatic relationship problems, they are red flags. The case tragically illustrates that separation is often the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship. When a victim attempts to leave, the abuser may escalate their control, leading to stalking, threats, and, as seen here, direct physical confinement. This escalation is not random. It follows a predictable pattern recognized by domestic violence experts worldwide. Understanding this pattern is essential for prevention. Preventing future tragedies requires a multifaceted approach. Communities, schools, and families need better tools to recognize the early signs of coercive control. especially when a young person is involved with an older partner. Institutions must develop procedures that prioritize the victim's safety above all else, ensuring that crisis protocols are disciplined and insulated from external pressures. Media organizations must critically evaluate their role during active crises, understanding that while public awareness is important, turning a hostage situation into live entertainment can have devastating consequences. Police departments need refined negotiation protocols that account for modern media environments, and society as a whole must shift its language. We must stop calling coercive control a relationship problem and start calling it what it is, a form of violence. Eloá deserved an ordinary future, a life filled with typical experiences, friendships, and the freedom to make choices without fear. Instead, her case became a national trauma and a global lesson in how quickly obsession can escalate into captivity and violence. While the legal system held Lindenberg accountable, accountability does not restore the life that was stolen. The only true form of restoration society can pursue is prevention, through education, stronger protections for young people, refined crisis management, and a media culture that refuses to treat a hostage's fear as content. If this investigation resonated with you, please like the video and subscribe to Brazil's Crime Vault. Your support helps us document more cases with care. Share your thoughts in the comments, especially about what warning signs communities should never ignore, and how media and institutions can act responsibly when a life is on the line.